I don't have much experience with doing video, so this is basically a test to how to set up video for YouTube and things like this, and also to talk to my dad about things along the lines of environmentalism and climate change and like things along the lines of the human condition and why we find ourselves to be in the state that we're in right now.
We've only got half an hour.
We've only got half an hour. Yeah. So I'll start to introduce myself. I'm Jamie. I'm a professional 3D artist and I'm also a full time traveler. We're currently on the island of Koh Chang, and my dad has come to visit me in my travels so I can spend some time with him. And we've been having lots of interesting conversations. So I thought it would be good to record some of them. So you, Father, introduce.
Yeah. I'm Sean. I'm Jamie's dad, and as Jamie said, I'm just here for 3 weeks, just under 3 weeks. Jamie's been here 4 months, so I've just come out to check that he's doing okay and
Alive.
Brushing his teeth and washing his clothes,
Sometimes.
and eating fruit, all those like things, which is not far from the truth. I've come out just to make sure that he's keeping body and soul together, but also obviously to spend some quality time. And we always have some interesting conversations, me and Jamie. So hopefully this will be one of them.
Or not. We might just both be silent for half an hour and then like, right, okay. So we just had coffee at the bar around the corner, and we were talking about topics to do with the world and difficulties with education and just confusion about how this whole system and how everything we have around us, all of the wonderful supplies and the resources and the systems, how did this come about, and Keely, how does it keep going? So you had a thought when you were younger, and I want to start off by going into that, and
Okay.
for you to tell me what this original thought when you were younger was.
Okay. Well, probably when I was a teenager.
You don't have to speak to the camera. You can speak to me, just to
Okay.
whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay. Probably when I was a teenager, although I'm 59 now, so teenage years and like times in the past are a bit of a blur, as they tend to be. When the longer you live, the more time telescopes, so you can't exactly pinpoint when things happen in your life. You can only vaguely do that. So it was vaguely when I was a teenager, I guess. I started having just sort of like idle teenage thoughts, anxieties really, sort of anxieties, questioning how everything kept going. I remember probably like late at night, all those typical times when you worry about things, sort of lying in bed, idly thinking, how does everything keep going? How do we always keep the show on the road? I know I wasn't thinking of the universe in general. It was very specifically, how does the whole sort of human system keep going? And I sort of looked at the complexity of the system, all the activity and interactions, all the roads, the transport system, the cars, the houses, the lights, all the activity, and all the entertainment, the holidays, all the interlocking systems. It just seemed to me it takes a lot of energy to keep that going. And it seemed to sort of just come up in my mind, surely there's a price to be paid for all that. How does it keep going? And I think vaguely behind that concern, that anxiety was, even though I wouldn't have labelled it as such at the time, there was an understanding that we lived on an island, like that the Earth is essentially an island in space, and that our resources are finite, and that all our activity comes at a price, like all users' resources, and surely there is a price to be paid, and surely it can't go on forever. I think that was the lingering question. Surely we can't keep doing this forever.
But this is what progression is about. It's about as we go through the stages, we went to tools and then farming and then agriculture, and then we got wheels along the line and electricity, and then of course the internet. Now we're going on to this future age, and I think the common belief is that it will keep going. You know, we can just continue our lives the way they currently are. Surely.
I think that's a common belief, and I think I've believed that for some of my life. But everything we do currently, in the past and currently, uses resources. And if we want things, and we haven't found a way of not using resources, we haven't found that yet. We haven't found a way of continuing our human activity that doesn't use resources. And in fact, quite the opposite, like our use of resources has massively increased exponentially as our human activities increased. So I don't see where this solution of like, oh, we'll just find a solution to make it all continue will come from, because there is absolutely no signs of that happening. It would seem
Like renewable energy, like windmills or solar panels or hydroelectric or anything like this. You know.
I think, well, the thing is with so-called renewable energy is that, well, there's two things really. In the first instance, it's not strictly renewable, because all of the two main, I mean, at the moment, what have we got? Wind power and solar power are the two main contenders, although there's others, aren't there? There's like wind and nuclear power. But there are resource constraints even on those, even on what we call renewable resources, because like windmills and particularly solar energy is relying on minerals. You know, there are rare earth minerals that are used in a lot of these technologies, and the more that we use those technologies, the more of those earth minerals we require. And with a massive electrical switch to electrification, which is what we're trying to do. I mean, both of those resources, wind and solar, are predicated on an electrical system. So where we're switching from a petrochemical system to an electrical system. And in upscaling that to the extent needed, to the extent to replace fossil fuels, would require such a volume of rare earth minerals to do that. And also copper, because in our current understanding of electrical systems, copper is our most plentiful and our best and most viable conductor for an electrical system, copper wiring and such like. But there's a limited amount of copper, you know, so these resources aren't strictly renewable.
I think the belief is really common that we can just, with the power that we have, we can just make this ginormous collection of wind turbines and solar panels, and that will generate the electricity needed for our increasing hunger for energy. But it's my understanding so far that that is a completely false path and is just burying us deeper down into the problem. And thinking that we can use technology and use the power that we have and the minds that we have to just buy our way out of this system, to buy our way into somehow turning the planet into this endless energy generator so we can have our flights and we can have our laptops and our lifestyles, whatever we want to do forever, you know? That is the common belief. And that's not how a finite amount of resources is going to work. We can't just create this technology like the solar panels and any even futuristic technology where we could just generate free power as much as we wanted it. We would still be destroying the planet with that power.
Exactly. I think that's the other problem with so-called renewable resources they're not strictly renewable. Like I said, they use resources which are slightly less finite than fossil fuels. But the other problem is that even if, like you said, we did happen upon or invent the perfect energy system, which is plentiful or free and abundant, infinitely, it ignores the fact that we use that power to do things. And those things that we do degrade our habitat and our environment. I think this is one thing that is often missed, is that it's not just about the power that you use. And we've all been, I think, culturally herded down a very narrow view of our predicament to believe and encouraged to believe that it's primarily an energy problem, that we've just got to come up with a different energy supply. Mm-hmm. And the whole zeitgeist of society is concerned with answering that basic question. But the other side of the equation is ignored, and that is to do with what we actually do with that power. What are the activities that we use that power to do? And when you strip all of our activities down, every single one of them, without exception, they all take from the environment, because that's what human activity does. Even if you're just sat on a sofa all day doing nothing,
it's calories.
Your body's an electrical system, and it will burn calories, and you're taking calories from your environment, from plants which grow. So there is no activity, no human activity you can think of at all that doesn't require power. And there's a lot of humans on this planet. You go back, within living memory, there was 2 billion people on this planet. Within living memory, that's about 80 years ago. And now there's just coming up to 8 billion. So you've got 8 billion people with massively interconnected networks and systems, like absorbing energy in a very efficient way. And when I say efficient, I don't mean that as necessarily a good thing. What I mean is it takes from the environment in a hugely efficient way. That's what we've created. We've created an energy network that absorbs not just power from the sun, but all aspects of our habitat and our environment.
Well, we can have anything that we want. We can buy devices online and get them shipped to our door. We can eat whatever meal we want virtually on our doorstep. It's a very strange reality to get used to if we go back in historical terms and look at how we've lived for the vast majority of our lives,
What you mean, the vast majority of human history?
Of human history. Yeah. This is like this really slim period of time.
It is, and I think that's what we often don't appreciate. I mean, humans have been around for what arguably, it depends which sort of anthropology.
It's raining, I'm just going to close the door. You can keep talking, okay. I can still hear you.
It depends what anthropological view you take, but modern humans have been around for anywhere between 1 million and 2 million years, depending on where you see the story as beginning. But for the vast majority of that time, we haven't lived like this at all. This modern way of living is really only like 200 years old. And even within that 200 years has really massively accelerated in the past couple of generations. Since the Second World War, there's been a mass acceleration into sort of technology and an interconnected world, into globalism, really. That massively accelerated after the Second World War. But like that technological story really started to ramp up with the Industrial Revolution hugely. So
centralized
you're talking about the last couple 100 years.
Yeah.
But in the span of how long our species has been around, 200 years is not a long time at all. But because we live very short lives compared to that massive span of human history, it's very tempting, is not the word, but maybe it's a mistake to live your life and look at reality as lived by human beings and think that, well, it's always been some version of this.
Yeah, of course.
Things have always ticked along vaguely like this, and change has always happened at much the same rate as what I observe in my my window of time, my 70, 80, whatever year,
Well,
however long your life is.
I'm not saying you're really old, but you've seen the advent of the internet, and how it's just completely revolutionized how a lot of us live our lives. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do anything of what I do without really high end technology and the internet of things everywhere. Um, so to see that change in your lifetime and my lifetime with smartphones coming in and social media taking hold and then optimizing the content that is seen on social media from just a picture of a sun to these short form content things that we see really common now. It's a tremendous amount of change, you know?
And I think we assume that change, if you sort of extrapolate that back into human history, that, well, oh, it's always been like that, right from like inventing the wheel or the dawn of agriculture or
Cavemen
whatever.
with TikTok.
Like, yeah, that's been our story.
Yeah.
But apparently, and this is sort of fairly recent knowledge to me, when you speak to anthropologists and when you speak to archaeologists, and even within written memory, that isn't the story. The level of change that we experience in our period of history now is massively, it seems, actually, when you look into it and when you talk to people that look at the fossil record, not to have been the same level of change that people would have experienced, let's say, 500 or 600 years ago. That change back in a fossil record and back in even in written history, which is fairly recent, change was much slower. If you lived your life in the 1400s, and you might live 50 years, let's say, you wouldn't really witness that much change within that 50 years. Things didn't change as much, the fossil record suggests. So if we're viewing human history from an uninformed perspective, we just assume that, oh, well, everything's just been like this. This is just the latest version. But perhaps the reality is more that we live in very unusual times. I mean, if you're looking at the human history as a whole, don't even take the 2 million years we've likely been on the planet. Just take, 10,000. Within that 10,000 years, these last 200 years have been extraordinary in the true sense of that word, extraordinary. And even if you narrow it down even more, since the Second World War, we live in extremely unusual times in terms of human history. Change hasn't always been like this, it seems. We live in, it's accelerated.
It's
exponential, but we don't see that because we live in such a short sample of that time. We assume that the story has been much the same, and that it's been a linear progression of time, or a linear progression of human change and human development, which is sort of like that, like change happens in much the same way. But it seems that that's not the case. And right now we live in a period of accelerated change, such that we can't keep up with it.
No, really. I mean, I can't. I'm 24 and I've grown up with technology and my job is within high-end graphics technology. And I can't keep up with the enhancements that is happening in AI. And much like my generation also, I can't keep up with Gen Alpha memes and various popular online content that I don't understand anymore. So it's not moving so fast that even you're losing touch with technology. I'm losing touch with what's going on as a young person. Every single week, every single few days, there's a new paper, there's a new study, or there's a new advancement in usually AI nowadays. In this technology, that unless you're completely engulfed in the news and what's happening within this space, you will fall behind, And if someone who's 24 is already falling behind of the curve, who works in the field, then the people in power, like the usually old men that are writing the rules in various different places around the world, or the people at the top ends of high-end corporations that ultimately control the world, we can just manipulate everyone around them because they're the only ones that understands how these black boxes of high technology work. So everyone is sort of going down this path of advancing technology and going down this area and going into spaces like AI and VR and um, blindly, basically.
And in many ways, it doesn't. I mean, I hadn't realised actually, just like because you were saying that to me the other day, how even you as a young person was now struggling to keep up with the pace of development. And like you say, like as someone who works in the field as well, I hadn't realised that until you said that the other day, which is telling
Yeah,
about where we are.
yeah.
Really.
If it was my biggest hobby to keep up to date with the things, I could keep up, you know.
Yeah,
But I'm not necessarily in support of the development of these technologies um, to be used as sort of mindless brain rot style entertainment. You know, I'm not. I, it's turned from this technology is giving me the ability to do my job and to be creative in the specific domain that I really relate to me feeling like I want to get away from technology. So I've got my foot in both camps at the
yeah,
moment. I'm
yeah,
sort of buying into this space. Like, I love this stuff. I love rendering and how graphics work and how computers work and all this technological space, but also at the same time, I also feel like I want to be in complete denouncement of it and run off into the woods.
yeah,
You know, so I'm stuck as well with
yeah,
that. Um, but I just want to go back to your thought of how can this all keep going, you know, and how does that relate to this progression that we've been experiencing? Do you
yeah.
think you felt somehow in touch with this back end caveman mind that was questioning this whole theatre and wondering how is this sustainable? Do you where did that thought lead you, and did that thought
Yeah.
stay with you as you developed, or did you what happened to that thought?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought it back to that because, um, just to recap, I had this like intuition which came and went. Or at the time, it didn't feel like an intuition. It felt like just a sort of like a teenage angst, sort of existential anxiety late into the night.
Classic teenage
That classic
experience.
teenage is like, oh, how does everything keep going? Like how does the lights stay on? How do the roads work? How do the cars? Surely it could all come to an end. But and then I stopped having that as an anxiety. I think as I went through my teenage years, and I think looking back on it from this perspective, I think I just got my head down maybe, and just probably subconsciously accepted that, well, everyone just gets on with it, don't they? Like everyone else, no one else seems to be worrying about that. It seems to work. I'm sure it'll all work out in the
Everyone's
end.
doing their thing.
Everyone's doing their thing, and I think just through the sheer weight of, well, you get dragged along by the zeitgeist of what you live through, and it takes a brave person to put their head above the parapet and say, I don't believe in this shit. Like
Yeah.
earlier on, where I was comparing it to the Emperor's New Clothes, and, it takes a brave person to say, well, actually, I don't believe in this. The Emperor's got no clothes.
Mm.
This system is flawed. And I guess my anxiety didn't manifest in me like standing up and saying, well, hang on a minute, there's some basic flaws to this design.
Yeah.
So I just put my head down and went along with it for probably years. And there's two events in my life after that brought back that sensation. One was, if I can say it in this space, was when I was probably about 20, 21, 22, no, a bit older than that, 22, 23, 24, that sort of age, experimenting with psilocybin mushrooms and having large doses, and going quite deep with it. And through those experiences, with the many insights that those things can give you, it's not a guarantee. But one of the really strong insights was a very sort of visceral understanding of what we are as entities, and the like visceral recognition that we're just monkeys. We're monkeys with a certain set of skills that have got lucky in a period of history, in a period of time. Our set of skills are very specific to doing a certain set of activities. And it's coincided with certain outside influences like stability in the climate, which allowed us to start agriculture. All sorts of things, all sorts of insights. And also perhaps the insight that, like, well, we don't own this shit. Like, we don't own the planet. We're just like one of many species that occupy the planet. We're just a tiny part of the biosphere. But we seem to have made this mistake that we own the planet, that it's ours. And this seems to be a really huge mistake. And I got that insight through taking psilocybin mushrooms, and
now it's baked into.
And now it's baked in.
Everything
now
is
it's
this,
absolutely part of my worldview now.
Yeah.
And it does link, obviously, a lot of the themes that I was exploring there on those mushroom trips links into this teenage angst of, like, what's the human game that we play, this game of civilization where, like, we do all these activities and we've got all these networks of connection, and this power that we use to make this valuable. Obviously there's a strand developing there through my life, because I will be 20, 22, 23, 24 with those sort of like high dose psilocybin experiences. And then years after that, probably I'm 59 now, probably when I was about 50, early 50s, 51, 52, 53. And by now in culture, climate change has become obviously a huge international talking point, thankfully. And I began to find out more and more about that, and began to realize, when you look below the surface level of information about climate change, when you go deeper into the information, and you take the time to look at the information and the science. Not that I'm any scientist, I'm still talking sort of pseudoscience, really, layperson science. But even that deeper level, deeper than what we're told about climate change in the media, is it's not, climate change isn't the problem. It's how we act on the planet. That is the problem. That's causing the breakdown, the fundamental breakdown. How we, like, absorb all the resources from our environment, from our habitat, and we use the power to do that. This is the crucial problem. Like, just having an alternative power supply won't solve our problems. In fact, if we had a more efficient, cheaper, more plentiful power source, even free.
Let's say it was free and it was infinite, and I could make it right here. What position would that put us in?
It would accelerate the abuse of the environment, because we'd just be given free rein then to power all the activities, all the other activities that we do, and all the other activities that we do rely on the environment. So given a free rein of power, it'd be like business as usual, but 100 times the speed, 1,000 times the speed.
Yeah, well, as maximum as we can go.
Yeah,
right?
It's not a power issue. The issue is what we use the power to do.
Yeah.
And everything, all human activity involves using things from our environment, and we can't get away from that.
No.
Like, you can't think of anything that we do that doesn't use resources. Even, I'm a meditator, and even if I sit down and meditate, while I'm meditating, like, arguably one of the most passive things that a human can do, I'm this electrical system which is burning calories. From the minute you're alive to the minute you die, you're absorbing resources.
We consume energy. That's like, to get down to the root of how you could explain a human entity, at the very basis level, you could say, well, we consume resources.
We're consumers.
Consumers, yeah, exactly.
And we describe ourselves as that.
Yeah.
But when you think
of as well, we're the consumers.
Well, we're consumers. Yeah. When you think of what that word and everything that it implies at a deep level, you realise, shit. Well, that's what humans do. They consume. But at one time, on the planet, there was only a few humans consuming like a small amount and living short lives. But now you've got 8 billion people, and it's not just about the amount of people. It's about It's about the interconnected system, the very efficient system of extraction, where we live extractive lives. We extract from our environment, and when you've got 8 billion people extracting extremely efficiently over and over again, because the economic system requires you to do it over and over again.
Yeah.
Like
if I make money from any particular job I do, where do I spend that money? It's in consuming. It's in
consuming. Yeah. It's in everything. I mean, I once think I read that, like, because we measure our economic efficiency, we measure our wealth with GDP, which is
gross domestic
product. Thank you.
Export, basically.
Well, yeah. A gross domestic product, if you describe it in physical terms, well, the higher GDP is, the more healthy a society is seen.
Yeah.
And in economic terms, if a country has high GDP, that's seen as a positive thing.
Yeah.
Economic growth, in other words, it's economic growth. That's what it is. But in physical terms, what GDP is, it means the faster you can extract resources from the planet and use them up as fast as possible, and then like either bury them in the ground or throw them in the sea or get rid of them, and then like use more resources and use it and then bury it in the ground or burn
like
it,
a crazy hungry
over and over
monkey,
again.
yeah.
That's the faster that cycle goes, the higher the GDP. And we use that GDP as a measure of our economic success and as a measure of our wealth. So we're actually addicted to like our own demise, really. And just to come,
it's a strange position to find ourselves in.
It's a madness. Yeah. But we see that as success, and obviously there's an end to that, because you live on a finite planet.
Well, that's where I wanted to go next. Can
I just
of course.
So just to bring it back to the what I now see as an intuition that I had as a teenager, this, how does it all work? How does it carry on? I look back and I say, well, I was right. I was right. I didn't have the language to the pseudo like layperson's scientific language, or this idea of economic systems or possible collapse. I didn't have the knowledge or the language to put my intuition into concepts or ideas. But I look back now on that teenage angst and say that I was onto something. I was onto something, and that in my life it was the first stage in what has been a very long journey for me of seeing that like the system probably almost certainly will collapse, because you can't pull rabbits out of a hat. Like you don't get
forever.
Yeah,
maybe
forever.
Maybe a few.
Yeah, you can fit 2 or 3 in there.
Stuff a few in there.
Yeah.
Some compression strips.
Yeah. But it's not really. It's not realistic. It's not realism to assume that you can do that. It is magical thinking. By definition, it is magical thinking to think that you can just keep doing that and somehow it's going to work out.
Yeah.
It's magical thinking. It's a more realistic view to recognise that, well, if you live on a finite planet, and you have activity which is unsustainable, well, then it won't sustain.
Shock horror. Yeah. There is an end. Basically.
There is an end, yeah.
Yeah. And we can't consume all the oil and make all the plastic products forever. And much of the messaging that we've been given about, or all of the messaging, perhaps you'd agree, about renewables and recyclability and moving our money from our consumption into our environment sustainability, like offsetting emissions or things like this. To call them wrong paths would almost be disingenuous. You could say they're complete scams. They're completely avoiding the topic and selling this perspective that you can shove your money somewhere else and use it for ecological progression and to save the environment by doing the same thing, which is consuming it just in a different way.
Yeah.
And you can progress us into a future that will be self-sustaining, and we can sustain this many people on the planet. Whereas these things are just the same parts of the same system, just with a different label. You can't just move your money somewhere else and this won't have an end. You can just keep going like this, like sustainables. You can invest heavily in sustainable energy production, and then we can just continue like we are because we have this infinite energy. But it's not the energy that's the problem. It's the fact
That's
that
what you do with it.
it's where we put it.
Yeah. Human activity requires, like, burns energy, and so the more energy you've got, the more activity humans will do, and all those activities eat into the environment. They don't just consume it, the energy like they're required to do it. They consume all the other like aspects of the environment, to the detriment, obviously, of ourselves, but also to the detriment of the whole biosphere.
Yeah.
You know, like animals and plants and minerals.
So that this is the situation that we find ourselves in, and I feel that this area is not known by so many people because they think, or many people think, that we can just continue on as we do, as we are, and as we have been progressing over time. So we've described where we're at, but my question is, where is this ship heading? Because we find ourselves in this position. Maybe we're trying to put words to how we find ourselves here and why we become obsessed with power and energy and dominance. But where do we go from here? What's the next step? Is this solvable?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, I belong to like an informal online community of people. Not that like I have a non-presence online. I just like read other people's stuff and watch other people's stuff. But it's a sizable community of people that, like, disparagingly you describe them as doomers. Although, like, I'm not against describing myself as a doomer, but are otherwise also variously described as collapse aware, and also a more advanced stage of that is to have collapse acceptance. And what lies behind all those definitions is the understanding of the difference between a problem and a dilemma. If one has I've never looked either of these two words up in the Oxford English Dictionary, but it's my understanding that, like, a problem is something that has a solution. Mm-hmm. And so, like, it's just a matter of like experimenting or thinking about it, and you find a way forward, a positive way forward. Whereas a dilemma doesn't. As I said, I've not actually looked this word up myself, but the argument in the online circles that I sort of mix in, as it were, would have it that a dilemma doesn't have a solution. So it's not a question of like, oh, well, what's the answer? The question is becoming aware of our dilemma. And I mean, we're near the sea at the moment. We're in Thailand. We're on this tiny little island, and we've just been sat this morning down by in a beach bar, drinking coffee and watching the waves come in. And if you're stood on a beach and you stood right next to the water's edge, and there's a big wave coming in, and what you're trying to avoid at all costs is a wave coming over you. And if that's the worst thing that can happen to you, well, then you've got a dilemma, not a problem, because because it's just nature that wave's going to come in.
Yeah.
Like, you can't engineer a way around that, because you're a small part in nature. And so what you've got there is a dilemma. You've not got something that has a solution. If you're stood right on the water's edge, and the waves are big, and there's waves coming in, well, you're going to get wet, because that's just nature. And in the same way, you could say about humans at the moment, it's just nature. It's just biology that if you've got a large amount of a species all trying to exist on a limited, and that's the important word, on a finite habitat, if that population is growing and the activities are getting more and more diverse, such that as they absorb energy more and more and more. And just as a sidebar issue here, it's worth pointing out that it's my understanding that our requirement for power doubles roughly every 30 years.
Yeah, so it's exponential, basically.
It's exponential, yeah. And that has been roughly the case for the last few generations, that our requirement for energy doubles every year.
Every 30 years.
Sorry, every 30 years, sorry.
We'd be in a much worse
situation.
situation.
We'd be much worse. We wouldn't even be here. The wave would have come in and swept us all away.
We'll all be drowned.
Yeah. So if you're a human being in history, humans are just another animal. They're just another species. It's just biology that, like, if you've got like a large population which grows and grows and grows in response to its habitat, its environment, because that's what happens if you give a small population an abundant habitat, and that was our situation. Like thousands of years ago, we've got a whole planet. You've only got maybe like 1 billion people at one time, less than that. You've got a whole planet to go at, and so over time you just like absorb it. But there comes a point in biology where the grown population cannot be supported by the habitat that is available, and a correction happens, and the correction happens in the form of a population decrease. There is a population crash. However that might happen, to that species, and this is a constant in biology. It happens to all of the species. It happens to us, except that we don't think it well, because we've got this belief that we're separate
other than the other animals.
Other than the animals, yeah, exactly.
We have all our stuff. We have all our technology and our thoughts and our religions, and
that'll get us through.
And that separates us.
Yeah, and whatever happens, that will always save the day. That all those cultural accoutrements will always get us through at the end of the day. Because that seems to be the case until now. But as we come to a point where the Earth's resources are really struggling to keep a pace with this grown population, with all its sophistication and requirement for power, what happens is there is a population crash. It happens to all of the species. It will happen in the view of, I guess, the community of which I'm part. The same will happen to us. I mean, whether that's in the form of a pandemic, or whether that's in the form of a sea level rise, or whether that's in the form of war, which would seem a likely way for us to go down.
Yeah.
And you would think that, then that's not an environmental outcome, is it?
Extremely environmental.
But it is environmental.
It's our
because
own minds.
War is just the activity of a species. If you put rats, if you got like rats in an environment, and they've got enough habitat for that population to exist. If you like put pressure on that habitat, you do that one of two ways. You can either limit the habitat, or you can, one of three ways, I guess. You can make the habitat smaller, you can limit the other resources, or you can increase the volume of rats. Well, then those rats are under pressure from the limited environment. It's an environmental pressure, and once their habitat is limited, it's quite likely that they'll attack each other.
Yeah.
Because of the scarce resources, or they'll self-harm as well.
Yeah.
And you could argue that humans do both those things.
Yeah.
Well, but we don't see war as an environmental outcome, because we just think we're separate. So we think all of our activities, including war, are part of our culture, which we see as separate to nature, because we don't see ourselves as part of nature.
Well, you've grown up and I've grown up with the view through our different educations and through the viewpoint of our family members and all of the people around us, that we are separate from the natural world. And therein lies a lot of the root of the issue where we find ourselves in.
I think that is the root. Like, if you can boil it down to one, in my opinion, if you can boil it down to one misstep, and it obviously wasn't a moment in time, but it was a tendency which has emerged, I suspect, in our species over millennia. The divergence is the divergence from seeing ourselves as part of nature. Human exceptionalism, basically is our fatal flaw.
So human exceptionalism, which is the belief that we humans are exceptional compared to everything else on the planet, and we have this unique God-given gift.
That like this is our Garden of Eden, and like we've got custodianship over it, which you could argue, that could be a good thing because we've got to look after it, but even that infers an ownership. And also like a hierarchy, that we tend to see ourselves as better than other animals. Like, it's almost a given. That's just a given in society. Like, we squash flies. Obviously, we eat animals, and everything else we effectively see as in our service, and that's an assumption that we make. We largely don't even question that. But when you think about it doesn't take much thinking about it. Think like, well, we're actually just another species. And you could argue that, like, we're no better than a fly. Really, like, but we're so.
Well, flies don't destroy anywhere near as much of the planet as us. So
they don't. Well, they degrade all the shit. A good question to ask yourself, I think, is like, what have humans done for the planet? What have humans done for life? And I know when I start to ask myself that question, or if you just ask anyone, usually the answer is, well, look at the science, look at art, look at all the wonderful things we've done, all the things we've achieved. And that's great for human society. But what have we done for the biosphere as a whole? Like, we've done a lot for ourselves, for human, and don't get me wrong, I've got skin in the game. I think humans are great, and I think we've achieved like loads of things, and like wonderful things, and like I'm not anti-human by any means, but I think it's I'm not always misanthropic, is it? I'm not misanthropic at all. Like, I love humanity, but I think it's a useful thought experiment to keep that. To keep that love of humanity, but also as a thought experiment to try and extract yourself from like that human-centered view, and to appreciate that, like, we ain't the center of the world.
No.
We're just this other species with this huge ego, and like, which has come to subsume everything else. And but we're no different to any other part of the biosphere. But this notion that we're A, better, and B, it's all ours. Just gobble it all up is obviously central to our dilemma. And it is, to come back to that, is, I think, I don't think there is any way out of it in our current form. I think dieback is inevitably what will happen, and what that looks like is anyone's guess. But I think population dieback from a biological point of view seems the most likely scenario. We're delusional if we think we can technologize our way out of this situation, because technologies all create, it's like a many-headed hydra, isn't it? They all create these other issues that are unforeseen, which we then got to deal with. And I think that's always been the case with the technology. Look at the internet, wonderful tool, like we all know, but look at the problems it's brought and the societal problems, which we could never have foreseen.
No,
Even just like,
I think humans have a delusion that we can create something and it's going to be like all good or all bad, and it's often a lot more complex than that. Like the internet was, it was initially seen as this incredible tool that we can utilize for communication and for work and for money and for pleasure, and it is all of those things. But we did not foresee with the internet and with social media the problems it would cause, the anxieties, the comparisons, the mental illness, the many deaths that have happened from various different issues on social media, and the degrading mental health that it causes people massively. These technologies have liberated so many elements of human issues like communication and organization. We wouldn't have the modern world as it works without technology. But look at how complex it's all become at the same time. And look at this chaos that we have because of it, that we need to unwrap and unwind. I mean, I think you were making the point the other day, which I've never thought about before, which is stupid because I've thought about these things a lot. But our minds are not predisposed to work on these issues, are they?
no, I mean, I think that it's interesting you said that, because I was just about to bring that up, that the world or human society has got more and more complex, and it gets more and more complex all the time. We've come from, in quite a short space of time, like 200 years, where a human life 200 years ago compared to now, would have involved much less complexity. Like the level of interconnectedness and just the amount of people that an individual knows. If you just take that one thing, the amount of people that an individual knows, largely because of the internet, that wouldn't have been completely different 200 years ago. You would only have known the people in your small town, because towns weren't very big. Like what they call a city in those days would be what we'd see as probably like a town now, a small town. And so we've gone into this incredible level of complexity, and as you said earlier on, even as a young person now, even for you, it seems it's difficult to keep up with it.
Well, one mind can't fathom everything now.
No, exactly. One mind can't fathom it. And that's all happening in a really short space of time in terms of the length of human history. But our minds and our cognitive capacity hasn't kept pace with that level of change. So we've got like very primitive minds and primitive brains trying to keep up with a level of technology which is just exponentially changing.
Yeah.
And this is why it's like a juggler, like starting with like 3 balls. It's quite easy to learn to do a 3-ball juggle, and you can keep up with that. But as you add more balls, it's harder and harder, and eventually you're trying to juggle all these balls, and like the human life hasn't got the capacity to do that, because like our cognitive capacities evolved, and human evolution is slow. But our capacity to develop new tools is quite fast.
Very fast. I mean, what we've done in one generation, like just in my lifetime, I was born in 2000, where the internet was there, but it was still a really, really novel thing, right? That I think I remember a story that you told me about that time where someone near where you were living had access to the internet in their caravan.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't want to misquote basically they went online, and it became a big deal. In
Shall I tell you the start?
Shorthand.
Sorry, maybe we'll wrap it up soon.
Yeah, I want to go into education a little bit, and
I'm getting quite tired now.
Okay.
We could do that and leave out the story if you want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be
okay.
better.
Yeah,
Basically,
okay.
the internet has come very, very fast, and human minds have barely changed. And this is used in many ways to addict us, but also to distract us from what we're discussing, which is where we went so wrong as a species and what we're facing in the future. I think that's a good summary of that point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I just want to ask the question again, where is this heading? I think to summarize that, it's heading to a difficult space where there's not going to be enough resources on the planet to sustain so many of us. And there has to be a population reduction in order for humanity to survive at all. And with dwindling resources, there's going to be a lot of stress involved in our society as we grasp and as we hold on to this enormous level of power and maneuverability that we've just gotten used to, that we've sort of accepted. I'm a human. I'm Jamie. I'm 24. I can expect to be, if I have the money, flying around the world, doing what I want to do, living my life the way I want to live it. And all of humanity is going to be grasping onto that desperately as we go towards this space where we just don't have the resources we've had over the last 60 years anymore. We don't have fuel to put in the planes, and our environment is being destroyed, and a lot of us are still really grasping onto how we've told life is going to be for us. From every system around us, we've been told this is how it is. This is progression.
Yeah.
And the issue is that this cannot happen forever. Like you said earlier, we live in very amazing times where we have so many resources that we can consume, and we can do whatever we want given the money. And that hasn't lasted forever, that hasn't happened forever, and it won't happen forever. So we're heading towards a space where it's going to stop. And how that happens, like you said, we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what we can't deny is that we're going towards a space where this rabid consumerism has to end in some way or another, because it can't be sustained. So lastly, I just want to go into education. And like we were talking about earlier, I think education, I've had a very hard time with school. I'm At the start, it freaked me out at secondary school. There was so much going on. I was overwhelmed. It made me severely depressed and extremely anxious. And at the same time, I also had this feeling going through this system that this package that they're giving me of these subjects and these topics and what I can do with my life is not reality. This is a story, and this is a pathway that you want me to follow. But deep down, I think a part of the reason why I didn't get on with school at all was because deep down I knew that this is all completely false, you know? And I struggled with that tremendously. And I really tried to make school work for myself. And I wanted to get my head down, like you said, and be able to follow the orders and get a job and get the grades that everyone wanted me to get. But that didn't end up happening because everything about the system felt false to me. And I think it just teaches you to get your head down and don't question how things work. The adults know what's going on. The adults are in control of this whole situation. There's someone steering this ship of humanity, and And we, the teachers, can guide you into how this whole world functions, and we can show you the ropes, and we can teach you how to make money and understand everything. But everything about that, the way it was taught, the complete theatre of how it's showing reality to be, is just a front for me. It felt like, similar to you, through psychedelic experiences, in the start of the pandemic as well, that it's just showing you this very small aspect of life. And in fact, you can go down a path that you choose, and you can go down a path that you can make for yourself. And I think education just teaches you to ignore these topics that you're talking about, ultimately, and to get your head down and get on with it, and don't question how the world works, because all of these resources, they're just here, and you can go and do your job, and you can go and make yourself happy in whatever way you wish, and just don't question the system. And that's why we find ourselves in such a problem with this, because there is no one, seemingly very, very few people, with any knowledge of the corner that we've painted ourselves into with this consumerism, and about the direction we're going to now. There is seemingly no one aware that we're heading straight into the rocks.
Yeah. I think, well, it's two things. I mean, just to add to what you just said there, I don't think there's a plan. There's lots of like conspiracy theories, and our culture is full of conspiracy theories, and I don't think humanity's together enough to orchestrate a convincing conspiracy, really. Like, nothing's organised, nothing's planned.
No.
It's just complete mess. And I think, like, governments are just sort of like making it up as they go along, increasingly, really. And teachers are, just, it's all a collective myth, isn't it? I mean, and you, I mean, it sounds like you are questioning in a similar way to me at a similar age. Like, what is this? Is this real? Is this like, how is this? I'm not sure whether I believe in all this or not. It's a similar viewpoint to have, and with you, you didn't put your head down as much. I mean, you did for a while, but then you were sort of really struggling, and like were quite mentally ill as a result of feeling like this didn't work for you. I mean, you were seeing through the collective myth, seems to me, to a degree, and I think that's what it is. It's a collective myth. I think if a lot of us stopped and thought, how does it all keep going? How does it all work? The answer's sort of obvious. Well, it does for now, mate. But it's probably going to all come tumbling down. And your teachers and like we're just like they're just doing a job. They're just part of the system. And that's not to say their heart's not in the right place.
No.
They believed, probably a lot of them believed in what they were doing, believed passionately in what they were doing. And I'm not knocking teachers, and I'm not knocking the value of knowledge and the value of, what's the word? Is it pedagogy? Is it
pedagogy?
Pedagogy, yeah.
I don't
know. Hugely valuable thing, but it's also got to be recognised that, we all live under like a set of delusions, and like schools peddle that. It's all a mixture, isn't it? You can learn some valuable things in this life, but what you also learn is that the emperor is wearing clothes, is wearing like this ornate, bejeweled, like fabulous robe, which will go on forever.
I can see it.
and sometimes maybe you just get a glimpse through, like you get a glimpse out of the dream, and you begin to recognise, look, this is like
No.
is a collective madness or a delusion.
There's there's a part of me that's like really upset that that is my experience. I still have a lot of trust for education and the teachers, and there's still a part of me that really there's still the part of me inside of me that really trusts them, because that was what the school system taught me, and it's going to take many years to, like, I guess, let that go.
Yeah,
So I was trying so hard to make education work for me, and to fit in the social
yeah,
environment, and to do well, and to do the things that made the people happy, like
yeah,
have a good year in the maths book, and in the science, and when you go to parents' evening, they've got good things to say about me. I really, for years and years, I really wanted to do well in that
mm,
system, and it's it's really hard to realize now that I'm coming into adulthood that they were just as lost as I am now.
and we're all doing that. Even after school, it's like, like one feels a pressure to have the right kind of job and have the right kind of income, have the right kind of house, right kind of car, do the right kind of thing, and um, sort of knuckle down and acquire the sort of like the status symbols of being a good pupil and a good citizen and a good human being. So we're all sort of like at school in a way,
Mm.
really trying to do what we're told to do. It doesn't just stop with school. We've all got societal pressures. And I
Mm.
mean, I feel it, even though I've taken often a sort of more alternative route. There's always pressures to have done the right thing and achieved the right thing, as in what is measured to be good
Mm.
by one's peers and by the society at large. It's
Definitely.
group pressure, isn't it? It's the pressure of the tribe to
Yeah.
sort of conform, and it's difficult because sometimes those things they can be often really good things mixed in with
Yeah.
really delusional things, and
It's hard to pick apart.
it is hard to pick apart, and one has to make a personal judgment about what to go along with and what not, and
Mm.
question why is one doing
Yeah.
like what you do in this life.
Without like blindly following institutional sort of advice, and,
Yeah,
and what is taught to you. I think for me, like, just following my own path, however wild and sort of bizarre that's sort of become at this point, that's the most important thing to me. And it was very hard to get through education without that being taught to me.
mm.
That's something
Yeah,
I've come to myself
yeah,
over many, many years of hard work, that the thing that is going to make me the most happy in my life is not this mark on someone else's sheet or this prestigious title, but it's truly, really realizing, what do I want to do?
yeah,
What is going to make me happy and the most fulfilled? And not resting on someone else's story and
yeah,
saying,
yeah, yeah. That's right.
okay, I'm gonna go into this system, and I'm gonna swim with this flock, and
Yeah,
um, and that will get me to where I want to go. But to be completely on my own and say, okay, so I want to be a 3D artist who travels the world, nomadic, um, into spiritual things, living this strange collection of hobbies and interests as an entire lifestyle. And I try to remind myself of that every single day. That
yeah,
that, that is what makes me most happy.
yeah.
You know.
It's like your own authority is sovereign. I mean, as long as
Yeah.
you're not doing to other people what you wouldn't have done unto you, that's an important life caveat. As I've just been reading in my Buddhism Pure and Simple book the other day, and which is obviously a Buddhist trope. Like your own authority is it comes into play every single day, and your own authority, as long as you're not doing to other people what you wouldn't have them do unto you, your own authority. I mean, it's also it's a very much a punk trope as well. I mean, I think like there's a punk group, a very political punk group from the like early '80s called the Crass, and I think they're one of the sort of like the sayings of the like it's on a lot of their artwork is no authority but my own. It's a very much like a punk and a Buddhist ethic. Is that like if you cede your authority to the culture at large, well then you're not conscious. You're just like you're living like a blind rat. It's really important to act out of your own authority, and that's where the responsibility lies in everything.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Yeah. With what I've taken, the path I've gone down, and the journey I want to take as I continue, the thing I would want to change the most of the past and of the future is just to buy in more and more to my own authority, to my own path, and to have the confidence to let go of what was taught to me in education, that I need to follow this particular line, and that is going to give me what I want in life. To say, actually, no, I have these ideas, and I feel increasingly more confident that this is going to make me content, and this is going to lead me to the people that I most love and connect with, and the places that I most connect with in my life.
And the community that you most connect with as well. I think because I think like the no authority but my own perspective, it's not I think it's important to say that it's not an individualist approach, because you could be part of a community, part of a collective, part of a society, part of a culture, and still have that view of personal authority. It's just that like the part that one plays in that society, in that culture, is viewed from a lens of your own authority, so that even when you play your part in humanity, your part in a culture, your part in a society, you question your individual action within it. You don't give up your authority. You see what I mean? So it's like you say, it takes you to the people that you love, and to the things that you want to do, and to the community that you feel most able to play out an effective part with, and so you wouldn't go off and join a ChatGPT cult and cede your authority to that. Like you always recognize that. Well, from a Buddhist point of view, that like your experience of mind is always the lens through which you view reality. That always will be, and in that sense, everything is in your mind, because you're having an individual subjective experience, and that's what the human condition is, and you can never get away from that.
No.
So you would do well to be aware in that space, rather than asleep.
Yeah.
That conduit, marshalling that conduit is
the most important.
Is the most important thing.
It's all you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I'd take that out to anybody who happens to be watching, and say, just like my dad said there, have awareness for what path you're walking down. And I'm not necessarily saying change anything, because that is a big deal, and that takes many years if you're very serious about it. But just have awareness of what direction are you going towards in your life, and is it your own, or is it something that's been given to you a long time ago, by a system that you're still struggling to connect with. Because this life, I think, I mean, I'm 24, so I think it's very short. And I think it would be really easy to get to the end of it, of this experience, and to look back and say to yourself, I didn't really truly start following my own path and what I really wanted to do in my life and what I really wanted to cultivate or find until I reached, 40, 50, 60, or ever, even if you do have that thought. So it's better to do it now as a young person and to have the struggles that brings. I'm not saying it's easy, but to follow your own path as early as you can and really just go for what you're wanting to find in this life, because as our talk suggests, we might not have long.
This year wrapping out.
Yeah. Yeah. How could you tell? And we might not have long, we don't know where this human system is going,
Just have the moment.
Yeah. We just, there's a meditator there.
Yeah.
We just have this time right here.
And if you're feeling confused about any of this, and you don't want to take on that sort of the responsibility of like personal volition, you could just join my cult if you want. I've got merchandise, and there's information here.
Yeah.
About how you can join my cult.
You live in Copenhagen, don't you?
That's a joke, by the way.
Yeah. Or buy my course, Yeah. Anyone wanting to sell you anything is probably not the right place.
No,
to go.
that's it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to summarize all that. So that's the summary. There you go. Thank you for talking with me.
Yeah. Been doing a lot of that.
Cap on my car.
Cap on my car. Been doing a lot of that lately.
Yeah.
Here in Thailand. Yeah.
End. Okay. Cool. I'll cut it there.
Right.
Nice. That was really good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
If you've made it this far into the video, or the non-video, as it became, congratulations. You get 2 extra pieces of homework if you're interested in hearing more. The first is a YouTube video called Collapse in a Nutshell, Understanding Our Predicament. And the second is a book called Overshoot, The Ecological Basis of Revolutionary Change. Both lays out the topics and ideas that we discussed in a much more formal and more consumable sort of layout where you can get a full idea of why this is the obvious conclusion for the position that we find ourselves in today. Thank you for watching. I want to make some more of these sorts of videos as I continue. So I'm excited for even just a few people to see this. Would make me really happy. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.